The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRCMedia, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
There are 10 candidates running for the Fall River School Committee in this year's municipal election on November 4th. And we're speaking to as many of them as possible between now and then so you can make an informed decision when you do vote on that day. I'm pleased to be joined by one of the challengers making his first run for political office. He is Randy Dudek. Randy, thank you for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for this time. I appreciate the opportunity.
So for people who don't know anything about you, I guess let's start by just having you tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I was actually born in Detroit, Michigan, where I lived for pretty much my entire life up until about 15 or so years ago. Detroit was doing one of its things where the entire economy needed to reset itself, and that seemed the perfect opportunity to pick up and try somewhere else. Massachusetts won the race, and I've been here ever since. This is where I met my wife. This is where we've had our children. And Fall River has been home for the past 5 summers now.
So how long have you been here in Fall River?
5 summers ago, we actually moved. We found out very late in the spring that our lease was being up in the summer, that our apartment was being sold, and that we were not going to be offered a new extension there. So we, on relatively short notice, we found the best possible place we could be, and that is what's brought us to Fall River.
So let me ask you, why did you decide to run for school committee?
Because, to be perfectly honest, like I said, we were on a very short notice for what our options were. We had to find a place that could fit our family and our time frame, and Fall River checked a lot of boxes. And like any concerned parent, one of the early things I did when we were looking at Fall River was I went online and I looked at what was everyone saying about the Fall River schools. And I think anyone listening to this is going to know that the online reviews of the Fall River schools are not very positive. I think I was seeing like 3s out of 10 on most of the sites I was looking at. Having had my daughters in the school since then, I can tell you their experience has been way more positive than negative. The staff, the teachers, the facilities have all been every bit as good as what I'm used to from my days back in school and from what I've seen with my 25-year-old stepson in his time in other schools. But I also know that there are things that can stand to be done better. There are challenges that we face here, and I'm hoping to get as many of those straightened out as possible so that not just my kids, but all of the kids can get every bit as good of an education as they want and are able to get.
Yeah. I meant to ask you, let me go back for a second. What do you do for a living?
I'm a cybersecurity analyst for Samsonite, work out of Mansfield, Massachusetts more often than not. I've been working various retail jobs, working my way up, for the last 20 years with an IT background even before that.
As you look, you said you've been in Fall River for about 5 years. What have you learned about the community in general, and how will that help you? Because in some ways, you're really an outsider, right? You're from Michigan in some ways. Do you think that'll be a benefit to you?
I am a little bit of an outsider, but I also, before I moved to Fall River, I lived in Middleborough, and in Middleborough, I felt like a true outsider the whole time. My whole family did. Here, one of the things that I think is the greatest about Fall River is just how diverse it is, and that it, there are the tight-knit communities, but they're also, from everything I've seen, welcoming to everyone else, and it just makes it a much more exciting place to be than a place where everybody kind of thinks and acts and has the same background and comes from the same place. It makes it more exciting. Like you said, I am from Michigan. I didn't live in Detroit proper, but definitely in a close suburb. So while the industries that have gotten the Detroit area and Fall River to where they are now are different, automotive versus textile, both places are kind of in the same spot. The big heyday where they were one of the top cities in the world is currently behind us, but both in Detroit and here, we're hoping to get back to a place like that again. And I think in a lot of ways we need to figure out how we did it before and how to make things like that happen again.
Yeah. As you talk with people out and about heading into the election, what are you telling them is your top priority, top thing you'd like to help accomplish as a school committee member?
My top priority, and it may be a little jaded or shaded by the time when we moved here, is to make sure that our teachers and our instructional staff in the building all feel like they're an equal stakeholder in all the children's education. I mentioned most of my experiences have been positive, and I mean that. But one of the negatives that still sticks out was last year, one of my daughters comes home from school on the verge of tears. And I'm like, what's the matter? She looks at me and goes, one of my favorite teachers is moving out of state. And my immediate attempt to console her is, well, if they're moving out of state, that's not, they have to pick up and leave. And then as I'm saying, I'm thinking, there's 48 other states where what I'm telling my daughter is true, and there's really one state that I'm hoping that this teacher isn't moving to. And I'm like, okay, where is she moving to? And no offense to our friends in the Ocean State, my daughter's like, she's moving to Rhode Island. And that's not really an out-of-state move the way that it was explained to the children to try to protect their feelings. That was a teacher trying to get enough money for them to support their own actual families, and they didn't feel they were getting that opportunity here. Our teachers went how long without a contract that's finally been ratified, but I've gone to school committee meetings where there are just teachers literally crying to the school board to try to get a new contract because they don't want to choose between their families and their students. My goal is to help make sure that these teachers are taken care of.
Yeah. I mean, the school department has received a huge influx of money over the past few years, mainly through what's called the Student Opportunity Act, which was an avenue that the state legislature passed in terms of, I guess, making the financial playing field more level in some ways, geared toward the gateway cities like Fall River, New Bedford, and others. There are people who say, "Boy, that's a lot of money. Then that things should be happening. That's better." It's been 6 years, I believe, since it's been in existence. I guess, what are your thoughts about? I know money doesn't equate, success or achievement.
Sure.
What are your views on the budget, and maybe what would you ask for or talk about in terms of how to spend that money maybe a little more wisely in your view?
There are current members of the school committee who are very, very focused on making sure that every dollar is properly accounted for. And I don't want to come off as saying that that's not important, because it is. It's very important. We need to know that our money is being spent as wisely as possible, and that what we're spending it on is actually helping the students. But again, I go back to the sheer number of teachers who have quit over the past 2 years strictly because of not having a contract. I do think the resources need to be funneled directly towards the students and the teachers to make sure the students are getting the education that they deserve, and that the teachers are both willing and able to provide it to the degree that they're, that they've gone to school, that they're trained to do.
You mentioned that you want the schools adequately staffed and obviously teachers paid what they're worth. Do you see in Fall River that there's more of a focus in terms of employees being like top heavy, more administrators and that level? And I guess, should there be another balance, a better balance maybe between those that are in administrative positions and maybe putting more teachers and paras into the classrooms?
That's a fair question, and I can honestly admit I don't have a good feel on what the teacher to administrator ratio is. I'd be definitely willing to look at that. I do know that one of my daughters is on a minor IEP, but we just got a letter literally yesterday, coincidentally, saying that due to a lack of support staff, she's not going to be getting her IEP services this year either. Last year, she was supposed to get speech services on a weekly basis and got it maybe between 5 and 10 times total. We're lucky that my daughter's speech is pretty good. And I do think had she had services this year, they may even have, an expert may have said she does not need them anymore. But not having an expert, having really seen her in the past 2 years, speaks to a problem with getting enough staff. And again, just because my daughter may not need or barely needs the support, that doesn't mean there's not hundreds of students in a similar situation who need the support even more than she does, and they're also not able to get it. I'm not going to say for sure that we need fewer administrators to equal more teachers, but if I haven't seen the numbers, I'm at least open to that possibility. what I know for sure from talking with teachers and other parents, we don't have enough teachers right now. And one way or another, we need to figure out how to get class sizes down and make sure guaranteed supports are being provided to the students who need them.
I mean, there's also, you've attended the school committee meetings, as you mentioned, but there's always talk about there's a lot of openings within the school department, not just teachers, but other as well. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if that goes back, this is just me asking rhetorically, whether it goes back to, whether the school department pays these positions in a manner that is as competitive as it is in other communities. And if you want to comment on that.
And as someone who is hopefully soon to be, but not yet a member of the school committee, I'm not in a position to say that is what the problem is. But as a parent of the district who's gone to plenty of these meetings, that is the feeling that is at least palpable from the audience, that the teachers don't feel like they're getting properly compensated, treated, and respected from the administration and the school committee right now. I'm very open to the possibility that I have only heard one side of the story, but I do know over the course of these most recent teacher negotiations, the other side, the administrative school committee side of the story, hasn't been made anywhere near as public as the teacher side has. If there is another valid side, which again I'm open to, that needs to be communicated better.
Yeah. As we're recording this in early October, recently the state released the MCAS results for the district, and in Fall River in terms of grades 3 through 8, actually 3 through 10, including the 10th graders at Durfee, levels have been pretty much comparable with what they have been over the past few years. Educational attainment and success has always been a question in gateway cities like Fall River. How, as a school committee member, can you help support the department in terms of either engagement with students or any other avenues to help with those scores? They're not the be-all, end-all. We know that.
Sure, absolutely.
But it is a gauge, and the city is compared with other communities of its size.
And just as a quick aside, I think it's unfair to the schools that we kept MCAS as a standard test but did take the graduation requirement out of it, because now the students who may not have even cared before have even less reason to try. So it's kind of an unfair metric, but I do understand that it is, one, the metric, and two, it is some level of a measurement. I think what we really need to do is, like you said, make sure that we are doing everything as a community to try to keep the students as engaged as they can. For me, and I'm from a slightly different time, the big reason for engagement in school was to believe that this is what we need to do in order to set ourselves up for future success. My stepson went to a technical school for high school, and that set him up in a different way than at least it looks like my daughters are going to be headed down in the high school, making sure that students realize that we have opportunities available for you, whatever your scholastic achievement is, but just because you're not getting perfect test scores, we're not leaving you behind, I think would help make them realize that everyone is in this together. It's our community and our teachers' job to try to help get you as ready as you can for the future, but that it is also your part to make sure you're doing what you need to do to make sure you're achieving, and it's your family and home support to help make sure you've also got what you need so that you're ready to learn and able to do your best. Not everyone's going to be a straight A student. I've got one who is, and one who has to fight to achieve anywhere near what her sister does. And we've tried to make sure they both understand that you're not competing against each other. You're both trying to do the best you can to make yourselves as good as you can.
Yeah. If elected, you'll be one of 7 actually school committee members. The mayor, of course, is also a member of the school committee. I guess talk a little bit about your views on collaborating and working in team environments that will hopefully benefit you as a school committee member.
Sure. In high school, I did play a handful of different sports. I was a member of our marching band, so I've got a big history of knowing that the team of any kind of a team really is only going to be as good as the person who's either the least successful or trying the least hard. You know, the weakest link is what controls the chain. You know, I've been to enough school committee meetings that I know that even politics aside, there are just people up there currently who are more concerned about making sure other people who are up there look silly, or that my voice is louder than yours, or I want to make sure I've got some point that doesn't even necessarily have to do with anything for the schools across. And if elected from a inside the meeting standpoint, one thing I really hope to help is focus back on, this is a school committee meeting. Let's focus on what the schools need to get them where we all want them to be. We may not agree on the exact path to get the schools better, but I'd at least like to hope all 7 of us are up there because we want to see the schools better. And the only way that we're going to make things better is by working together.
All right, Randy Dudek, a candidate for school committee. Appreciate your time. All the best in the election.
Thank you very much.
We'll talk again soon.
Thank you kindly.
All right. And thank you for joining us here at FRC Media. Please make a point to vote on Tuesday, November 4th.